in a previous video I created a menu system using the tree behavior, and one of the comments just highlighted the fact that I didn't well explain how the tree behavior was setting the left and right column values and how that is managed. So what I thought we'd do with this video is create a table and then enter some records, and then finally enable that table to be a tree behavior managed, and just go through the things that you'll come across as you do it, so you can go from not having a tree behavior enabled table to fully tree behavior enabled. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is create a migration. I'm going to create a migration called create TreesTable. And if we go into here, and that's terribly spelt, so we might rename that. So I've managed to misspell it, but that's okay. Let's now firstly create our table here. So this table trees we're going to call it, and I'm going to add a column, and all we're going to add to start off with is a name column. And now we can run our migration, and once we do that, if we just refresh our SQLite, we can see that that table is created there. And if we look at the data here, we can see that there's none. So ultimately we're going to be adding in these three fields, parent, left, right, to tree behavior enable the table. So the next step is we want to bake some views. So if we go bin, cake, bake all, we can see we've got the option to bake for TreesTable now. So we just enter that and it creates all our views, update views automatically. Now to get into that, we can do that, but we might just add a menu item to our menuing system. So we're going to call this the tree behavior menu item, and we're going to enter trees and index, make sure it's marked active, and submit it. And we've also got a bit of ugliness there because the automatically baked views don't have the correct styling. So I'm just going to go make a small change here. So menus, trees, let's go index, and we're just going to say it's a table, and table striped, just to give that some styling. Okay, so let's add some items. Item 1, item 2, and item 3, and item 4. So we've now got, if we have a look at our database, all we have is just some data in the database and our ID fields. Now, how do we go from just a plain table with some information all the way to tree enabled? Well, it says here the requirements are we need 3 fields, parent, left, and right. And here it says this parent needs to be nullable, but it doesn't say that for left and right. But if we tried to do this exactly as it says, we wouldn't be able to do our migration because we'd get a problem with the constraint on the table, so we wouldn't be able to do that. So we need to make our migration. So let's go bin cake migrations, create tree enable TreesTable. Maybe you can spell it right, TreesTable. And so get hold of our table. It's called the TreesTable. And now we say we want to add columns. So the first one was parent ID. And it's going to be an integer. And the parent table needs to be nullable. And if we don't provide a value for it, just the default value will be null. And once we've done that, we can do the same thing for both the LFT and the RGHT fields, because just for the time being we need to be able to insert these records and we don't want to run up against a constraint. So once we've done that, we choose update, because this is not, we're not creating a table, we're updating it. And that looks about right. So now migrate, and it's been successful. And then when we refresh, we can see that we now have the requirements for a tree behavior in our table. So now let's tree enable the table. That's the next step. So to enable it, do this. So put the add behavior statement into your table class. So we now need to go, it's the TreesTable, as you can see here. So we need to go src model table TreesTable, scroll until you find the initialize method, and then just add in the tree behavior there. So once we've done that, let's have a look at what happens when we add a new item. Let's add item 5 and go to our database and have a look. Now notice that it successfully added item 5, but it's the very first record after creating the tree behavior fields, and it's 1 and 2. Now if it's left 1, it should appear as the very first thing in the list. So we now need to work our way towards having all these fields filled in. We don't manage them manually on our own. The tree behavior does that for us, so we don't actually add things into here manually, but we need to make sure that this full table all has values in left and right. So how do we do that? Let's go to the documentation. It says you can let Cake build the internal structure if already holding some rows. Well, we need to use this here. We need to use the recover statement. Now, a way of doing that is to go into your controller. I'll just close all these things. Go into the controller for the table. Choose one of your methods. Index method is good because it's just easy to do. And then go this, and then table name, and then use recover. Now, at the moment, our autocomplete is not working, so let's just go and fix that. So I'm using the extension. I'm using the IntelliFence extension and the paid version. So to enable autocomplete for our editor, let's go and find our table class again. And in our comment, all we need to do is say, okay, I'm going to add a mix in here, and it's cake, ORM, see how it's auto-completing for it, behavior, and then tree behavior. And now once I've done that, let's see what happens when I again try to auto-complete here. You can see that I now have that method auto-completing, which means that the editor knows about these extra methods within the tree behavior that's being included in the table class. So now we've done that, let's hit that endpoint. And we go here, and it's obviously just the index field, so this is exactly the same as going index. And we've just hit that. Now if we go back to our table, we can see that the tree behavior has now looped through all the records and given each record a left and right value. Now if you look down the left hand column, the left column, you see that 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So that is the column we want to sort by, because that is the column that dictates the sort order of the tree. So what we need to do now, we've recovered the tree, so we've given every single tree value in the database a left and right value, so we no longer need to do that again. Now we'd like to run a migration, create removeNullable from LFT and rght. So let's create another migration now, which basically is going to be a duplicate of this, adding those fields. This time we want to, and let's just have a look at the definition of the table. So if we go in here and look at modify table, right at this moment, you see how not null is not checked. So at the moment it allows nulls for these values, but we don't want that for the future. So we want our application to blow up if anyone tries to insert a record that does not use the tree behavior to manage the left and right column values. So we're going to now make a change in our migration here, and I'm just going to remove these null attributes for these two columns, and we can leave everything else the same and just migrate that value. So at the moment, what's happened there? Okay, so I've done a copy and paste, and I've forgotten to make a change here. So I shouldn't have done that. I should have made this into, we need the add column, we need to change add column to be change column. So let's just change that, and hopefully, yes, we've got the correct name. Let's try that again. And now let's have a look at our databases. I'll just press F5 to refresh here, and then look at our table and see now it's now restricted to be not null. So you can never enter anything into these columns from now on that will corrupt the tree. So if there's no value being supplied, it simply will not save, it'll blow up, and you'll know that there's a problem. So that's now fixed the problem of other processes, or maybe custom SQL trying to write into your table and then destroying the validity of your tree and causing you to have to recover it again. So let's just now have a look at the next step that we need to do. We need to give our tree the ability to make records the child of a parent. So we need to put a parent ID field in now. So what I'm going to do is just close all these and then go to our templates, go into our add and our edit fields, and just here, instead of having just a name field, I want to put a parent ID field. And to save time, I want, whenever I'm adding a field, I don't want it to auto add the first record as a parent. So I'm going to say I want that select field to be empty by default, so it doesn't include a value initially. And we can add the same to our edit template, and now if we have a look, we now need to add a find query in the controller for edit and add, so that we've got a list of parents to select. So let's go and do that. src TreesController. We're going into the add method, and we need to say, okay, parents equals this trees find. We're looking for a list, and by default it will grab the name column and the ID field and return that. And we need to, let's have a look at this. This is the add column, so that's good. And then we just pass that through to the view, and we need to do the same thing with edit. So it's exactly the same, except in this case we want to say to not, and we want to say the ID does not equal the ID passed to it. So if we're editing, we want to say, okay, I want everything but the same thing, because a item cannot be a parent of itself. And once we've done that and we reload, we can then make item 2 a child of item 1. Now there's a problem that we're running into right at this moment. If we have a look at the data, I just said I wanted to make one of item 2 a child of item 1, and it hasn't added the item 1 ID to item 2. Now why is that? Well, because we've just done a bake and we're adding functionality in that wasn't there initially. Now we've got the challenge, and there was no parent ID field, so we now need to add parent ID and say yes, that's mass assignable. So let's try that again. Let's go to item 2 and make it a child of item 1, and then go back to our database, and we can see that now that it's not mass assignment protected, we can now successfully update that field in the database. Now what we're seeing now is that we don't have any visual indication of this being a child. So we want to give ourselves visual indication that it is a child by making a change to our view. Now in the previous video, if we have a look at our index view here from the previous video, we used a database field called level. We'd included that level field in the database, which meant that the tree behavior kept track of the level and entered it into the table. So we're going to do something similar, but let's just do something a little bit different. So having a look at our documentation, yes, you can. If we scroll and keep going, node level. The last video we basically said, can you please keep track of whatever level that the individual item is at by adding a database field called level. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use this tree behavior getLevel method to find out our levels. So let's now do that. Firstly, we'll copy this code from our previous index and put it into our index so that we can display our, and we're going to change this. We're going to go, or maybe we just press Alt, press delete a few times, go tree. All right, so now we're saying whatever a level is assigned to this particular entity, this tree record, we want to multiply it by 3 to repeat 3 non-blanking spaces. So at the moment, that's not going to work because we currently have not got any level associated with entity. So let's go into our TreesController, into our index view, and now we're going to do something long and complex, but just to show you the use of this method. So we're just going to say, okay, trees equals make a collection of trees, then map through it, and for each item in that tree, what I want you to do is I want you to assign a level by going this trees, now that, and you see there it takes an entity, so we're passing in the entity there, and then once we've added that to our entity, just return it again. And let's have a look at that, see if we've done it correctly. Hopefully this is correct. Let's hit the index method again. And we should see when we expand that now we're storing a level, and we can see that that level is now being included. And that's using the getLevel method. Instead of storing it in the database, just using getLevel to calculate what level an entity is at. So now, if we go and refresh our view again, hopefully we'll see it stepping down. So we know that this is a child. Now in our previous video we worked with a number of different methods. So if we look at oops, let's go moveUp, I think it was. Yeah, so we've got these methods here to manage our tree. So it's moveUp, moveDown, there's a couple of different ones, removeFromTree, there's a few different ones there, and every time one of those methods is run, what it will do, it will just change the values in LFT and rght to reorder and create that tree structure using these 3 fields. So what we can do now is, let's implement some of those tree behavior methods in our TreesController, and let's not reinvent the wheel. So I'm just going to copy, there's 3 different methods we've got here. We've got the moveUp method, which is a tree behavior method. There's here we've got the moveDown method, and finally we've got a removeFromTree method. Now what removeFromTree does is, if the item has children and you remove it from the tree, it will basically take all the children and keep them, but if I'm actually confusing myself now, but it will remove that particular item from the tree, and then you'll be able to delete it without deleting the children. So what we're going to do, so we don't have to retype all this code because it was included in the last video, I'm just going to minimize all this, copy all these methods into my TreesController. So go into the bottom of my TreesController, and I'll just find and replace the trees table and replace menus with trees, and then I will also need to change $menu with $tree, in this new table, and then that's all that's needed. And we also need to, we're no longer saving the level. In our last video we saved that level into the database because there was some sort of bug that we found, so we no longer need to do that. It'll be just success or failure because we're not storing the level, and we don't need to get descendants. Right, so that's remove and delete, that's good. So now we just need to add that into our view. So go to our template files, go into menus, the index view. These actions were made available via the index view. Let's now go in and add these tree behavior methods. And so we need to, this time, we need to do the same thing. Replace tree menu with tree. And now we're getting close, but there's still something that's a problem. Now, if I click on the up here, so by right, if I click up, item 4 should have moved up, but it's not. Again, if I click the down button here, this should have changed location and jumped downwards so that we can see that. But what we're doing at the moment, we're not sorting by the correct field. So our display is just defaulting to order by ID. So we need to make a change here. We need to say add this configuration to paginate property. So we need to say order is by LFT and ascending. Now once we've done that, let's just have a look. We've made a couple of changes. Let's see if it reorders the tree properly, and it does. And then if we again make use of these tree behavior methods, now notice what happens there. So let's say, for example, we move item 3 up. So if we move item 3 up, notice that at the moment it's 7 and 8, but when I refresh, notice that it's now changed the left and right values. And again, if we make item 4 a child of item 3, and you can see that we now just refresh, and you can see that every time that we make a change, we reparent something or give something another child, it reorders everything to make sure that tree behavior is consistent. So this is just an overview of tree enabling a table. I hope that answers the question of how do we manage these LFT and write fields. Well, in practice we don't, because the tree behavior does it for us. The recommendation is that we never modify the table with methods that aren't tree behavior aware. So if you go into here and read the documentation, you'll realize that there are certain things that you need to do to make sure that things maintain their consistency, but generally the general methods will work fine and do what you expect them to, but certain methods such as remove from tree and those sorts of things will basically enable you to, if we have a look, so if we want to if we just press delete, well, let's just do that on item 1. If I click delete on item 1, it will delete all the children. But if I then connect to this remove from tree, notice what happens to item 4. It removes item 4 from underneath and then just puts it at the next level up while just removing that single item. So I really hope that that answers that question of how do we manage the LFT and RGHT columns. I hope this is useful.